Rain lashed the cobbled streets of Soho's Little Italy, casting long shadows through the mist as midnight approached. Within the cozy glow of Trattoria Rossi, diners savored their last glasses of Chianti, unaware that beneath their feet, in the dark and echoing cellar, death had already taken its seat at the table. Alberto Rossi, patriarch of the restaurant, lay sprawled beside a toppled cask of wine, his face frozen in a mask of terror. The cellar door was bolted from the inside, no weapon in sight, no footprints, save his own. "Mon Dieu," whispered Hercule Poirot, surveying the scene. "A man cannot murder himself and yet bar the door behind him. There is trickery here, Hastings, most cruel trickery." The rain had begun, with a soft drizzle just after dusk, but by midnight it was a torrent. Soho's narrow streets glistened like sheets of black glass, the puddles reflecting the red glow of gas lamps and the occasional headlight of a motor car splashing through the quarter known as Little Italy. The air smelled of wet stone, roasted garlic, and coal smoke, carried on a wind that curled around the corners of brick buildings like a living thing. On Dean Street, nestled between a tobacconist and a tailor's shop, stood Trattoria Rossi, a modest Italian restaurant with a reputation that reached beyond Soho. Its whitewashed facade, green shutters, and faintly flickering sign invited weary travelers and loyal patrons alike. Tonight, however, the glow seemed muted. Shadows pressed closer against the glass panes, and behind them, the restaurant's heart was troubled. Inside, the dining room still hummed with a late-night crowd. A quartet of musicians coaxed out a wistful tune, while couples leaned across tables cluttered with empty plates and half-finished bottles of Chianti. The hum of voices and clatter of cutlery offered a fragile illusion of normality, yet an undercurrent of unease drifted between the tables, an awareness that the master of the house, Alberto Rossi himself, had not made his customary rounds that evening. Rossi was always present, always smiling, always ensuring each guest felt like a member of his family. His absence was an echo that everyone felt. "Horses before a storm." Poirot tilted his head, his dark eyes twinkling though his expression remained grave. "Mais oui, Hastings, it is most peculiar. In an establishment where routine is religion, deviation is the loudest signal of all." As if to punctuate his words, the music faltered. A sour note caused patrons to grimace, and in the sudden silence, a loud crash reverberated from below, wood splintering, glass shattering. The sound rolled through the restaurant like thunder. Diners gasped. A woman shrieked. Maria Rossi went pale. "The cellar," she whispered, before rushing toward the stairwell. Hastings half rose, but Poirot's hand restrained him. "Patience, mon ami. We go, yes, but with caution. The truth, she does not flee so quickly." The cellar door creaked open as Maria disappeared below. Poirot, gathering his coat neatly, followed in measured steps, Hastings at his heels. The stairwell was narrow, lit by a single swaying bulb. Damp air rose up, carrying with it the mingled odors of earth, wine, and mildew. Each step groaned underfoot, as though protesting the intrusion. At the bottom lay the wine cellar, rows upon rows of racks laden with bottles, their glass throats glinting in the dim light. Wooden casks lined the walls, some ancient and bearing Italian inscriptions, others newer, marked with chalk scrawls. Yet it was not the noble display of vintages that arrested their attention. On the stone floor, sprawled unnaturally beside a toppled cask, lay Alberto Rossi. His eyes stared wide, unseeing, the pupils blown with a glassy terror. His once rosy face was drained of life, fixed in a rictus of pain. A wineglass, shattered, gleamed beside him, its crimson contents bleeding across the stones in macabre imitation of blood. Maria let out a strangled sob,
falling to her knees. Poirot raised a hand swiftly, commanding silence. "Do not touch, mademoiselle. For the dignity of your uncle, yes, but also for the truth." Hastings muttered, "Good heavens, Poirot. He looks as though, well, as though he'd been frightened to death." Poirot crouched.
"Locked room, is it? Looks to me like a seizure. The man wasn't young, after all." Poirot straightened, his moustache twitching. "No, Inspector. He did not die by nature's hand. Regardez. The bolt locked from within, the broken glass deliberately placed, and yet no sign of struggle, no weapon, no intruder." He paused, his gaze sweeping the chamber. "It is a tableau, Hastings, a stage set for our eyes. But why? And by whom?" Graves grunted. "You'll have us chasing shadows, Poirot. Best leave this to the yard. Natural causes are far more likely." "Perhaps," Poirot said softly, his accent curling like smoke. "But a man does not arrange his own death so artfully. Nor does he lock the door behind him to create a mystery. No, Inspector. Here we have the hand of one who wishes us misled." Maria wept quietly, beside her uncle's still form. Hastings shifted uneasily, glancing from Poirot to the body. "So where does that leave us?" Poirot's eyes narrowed. "With a puzzle, mon ami. And puzzles, they are my bread, my wine, my very sustenance. The murderer, whoever he may be, believes he has written a riddle none can solve. But Hercule Poirot," he tapped his temple gently, "will read the handwriting on this page." The storm above roared its approval, thunder shaking the cellar as if to underscore his vow. Chapter 2. Suspicions in the kitchen. The kitchen of Trattoria Rossi was rarely still. Even at the midnight hour, after diners had drifted away into the storm, the heart of the restaurant pulsed with life. Pots clanged, knives chopped, and the lingering perfume of garlic, onions, and simmering tomato sauce clung to the very walls. Yet tonight, the atmosphere was one of unease rather than routine. The flames hissed too loudly, the clatter of dishes seemed forced, and the voices of the staff carried the brittle pitch of fear. Poirot and Hastings entered quietly, though their presence was like a bell tolling among the workers. Conversation faltered. A young waiter, barely more than a boy, dropped a tray of cutlery, and the ringing crash echoed through the space. Poirot, ever courteous, inclined his head and murmured apologies. He muttered. "He came in here, all smiles, checked on the sauces, tasted the wine I kept for him. He laughed, said the night was good for business. Then he went down to the cellar, as he often did. I never thought—" His words faltered, and his great shoulders sagged. Hastings stepped forward. Did he seem distressed? Was he threatened by anyone? Did you notice anything unusual in his manner? Gianni shook his head. Nothing unusual. Except— He hesitated, glancing at Maria Rossi, who had followed them, her face pale, her hands tightly clasped. "Except what, mon ami?" Poirot prompted gently. Gianni sighed, kneading his dough as though the action gave him courage. "Except, he asked me if I had been paid my wages for last month. Strange question. He knew the answer already. He had not paid me. He said he would make it right, but his tone, it was heavy, like a man burdened with debts. Perhaps he feared something." Maria interjected sharply, her voice edged with a defensiveness that seemed too swift. "My uncle's finances are private. Chef Gianni is exaggerating. My uncle was a generous man." Poirot raised his brows. "Generosity, mademoiselle, is often in the eye of the beholder. One man's gift is another's overdue debt." Before Maria could respond, the kitchen door swung open, admitting Clara White, the restaurant singer. She was draped in a silken shawl despite the humidity, her blonde hair damp from tears, or perhaps from the storm. Her painted lips quivered, and her darkened eyes were smudged with mascara. She looked in that moment, every inch the tragic heroine of a silent film. "They told me," she whispered, her voice tremulous yet carrying through the kitchen.
Alberto is dead. My Alberto. She collapsed into a chair, covering her face with a handkerchief scented with jasmine. Poirot approached her slowly, his gaze sharp. Mademoiselle White, you were close to Signor Rossi? Her eyes flashed with a strange defiance between tears. Close? He loved me. He promised me a future beyond this restaurant, beyond singing for drunken men and clattering plates. We were to leave for Rome, together.
Poirot noted. No tears fell, despite the shaking voice and streaked makeup. He leaned closer, speaking in a voice meant only for Hastings. You see, mon ami, the eyes. They do not weep, though the lips proclaim sorrow. This it is what we call une sincérité manquée, a sincerity that has failed in its attempt. Before Hastings could reply, the young waiter burst through the kitchen doors, his face ashen. Monsieur Poirot, he cried, voice breaking. It is the office, Signor Rossi's office upstairs. Someone has broken in. Gasps rippled through the kitchen. Maria clutched at her shawl. Clara dropped her glass with a sharp crack. Gianni swore under his breath, flour dust rising from his apron. Poirot's eyes gleamed with sudden fire. He straightened, every inch of his small frame taut with focus. Alors, Hastings, the murderer, he is not finished with his play. To the office, vite, for in haste mistakes are made, and mistakes, they are the footprints of truth. And with that, Poirot swept toward the staircase, leaving behind the kitchen with its smells of basil, its heat of human conflict, and the lingering shadows of secrets, yet untold. Chapter 3. A Room Ransacked. The stairwell leading to Alberto Rossi's office was narrow and steep, with the kind of creaking wooden steps that betrayed every footfall. Poirot ascended not with haste, but with care, his patent leather shoes clicking like a metronome. Hastings followed, more hurried, his taller frame brushing against the plaster walls. Behind them, Inspector Graves puffed irritably, his damp overcoat leaving smudges against the banister. The corridor above was dark, save for the flicker of a gas lamp that sputtered in protest against the damp storm outside. The office door hung ajar, swaying gently as though someone had only just slipped through. The smell of cigar smoke lingered faintly in the hall, unsettling, for no one had been smoking in the kitchen below. Poirot pushed the door with a fingertip, and it creaked open to reveal chaos. Papers littered the floor like fallen leaves, drawers had been yanked from their cabinets and overturned, and the once pristine desk was a battlefield of ledgers, receipts. Downstairs was untouched, and Rossi's pocket watch remains upon his desk. He pointed to a gold timepiece, its chain gleaming amid the mess. A thief who ignores gold but tears apart ledgers is not common. This is not theft of greed, but theft of information. Hastings leaned down, squinting at the ledger. Debts, it looks like. Rossi owed someone a tidy sum. Bellini by the name here. Antonio Bellini. Ah, Poirot murmured, his eyes glinting. The rival restaurateur. Always it is the rivals, n'est-ce pas? But let us not leap ahead. The truth. She walks slowly. He turned his attention to the wall, where a row of decorative knives once hung in display. One spot was empty, the outline in dust, marking the absence starkly. Hastings frowned. One's missing, Poirot. Could that be the murder weapon? Poirot examined the empty hook with delicate fingers. No. Observe. The dust is heavy, the mark clean. This knife was removed some time ago, not tonight. And Signor Rossi, he was not stabbed. His death was arranged with more subtlety. This missing blade, it is but another performance, a misdirection to draw the eye. At that moment, Poirot stooped to retrieve a small scrap of paper from beneath the overturned chair. He smoothed it out upon the desk. A ticket stub, torn neatly at the edge. The print bore the name of Clara White, the singer, and the date, tonight. The stub was stained with a dark blotch of wine, still damp. Hastings raised his brows. Her ticket, here. But why in Rossi's office? Poirot tapped the stub thoughtfully. That, Hastings, is the question. Was it dropped in haste by the hand of truth, or planted with care by the hand of deceit? Graves grumbled. You see conspiracies in scraps of paper. I see a lover's quarrel, plain and simple. The woman came to meet Rossi, found him in debt, tempers flared, and, well, we know the end of that story. Poirot gave him a look of polite pity. You see, Inspector, but you do not observe. If Clara White came to this office tonight, then how did she enter the locked cellar where Rossi's body lay? No.
Rossi's signature and a list of accounts. Several names had been crossed out violently, ink smudged by what looked like sweat or trembling hands. At the bottom, half legible beneath the scorch, was a phrase in Italian: Vendetta non dimentica. Vengeance does not forget. Hastings exhaled slowly. That doesn't sound like a debt collector's note, Poirot. That sounds like a threat. Poirot nodded gravely. Oui, mon ami, a threat written in fire. But the hand that wrote it, was it Rossi himself, fearing his fate, or another, promising it? Graves waved a hand impatiently. Threats, debts, tickets, it's all smoke. The man's dead, that's the fact. We'll haul in Bellini and the singer, question them hard, and be done with it. Poirot rose, dusting his knees. His expression was calm, but his voice carried quiet steel. You may do as you please, Inspector. But Hercule Poirot does not rush to accuse. The murderer, he is clever. He scatters red herrings like a fisherman throws chum to the sea. But Poirot? He touched his temple. He does not swallow so easily. Hastings watched as Poirot carefully folded the scorched page and the ticket stub into his case. What are you thinking, old chap? Poirot smiled faintly. I think, Hastings, that our murderer is a dramatist. He stages scenes. A locked cellar, a ransacked office, a missing knife. It is theater, and we are the audience meant to applaud the wrong act. But I do not applaud until the curtain falls. As if on cue, a gust of wind flung the office door wide, slamming it against the wall. The corridor beyond yawned like a throat into darkness. Poirot turned, his eyes narrowing. Come, Hastings. The night grows older, but the play is only beginning. Let us see who else has a role to perform. The rival restaurateur. The morning after Rossi's death broke reluctantly over Soho. The storm that had lashed the night before left the streets washed clean, yet the air hung heavy with dampness and the faint tang of coal smoke. Trattoria Rossi, shuttered for the first time in years, stood
Antonio Bellini. A rival in trade is often a rival in spirit, and when there are debts, competition, and wounded pride, eh bien, there are motives most plentiful. Bellini arrived at the café with the confidence of a man used to attention. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his hair slicked back with pomade, his suit cut in the latest Italian fashion. A heavy gold ring glinted on his finger, and the scent of expensive cologne preceded him like a herald. Messieurs, he greeted smoothly, sliding into the chair opposite Poirot. I hear you wish to speak with Antonio Bellini. I am here. Though I warn you, I have no patience for gossip or for police tricks. Poirot regarded him calmly. We are not here for tricks, Signor Bellini, only for the truth. You were acquainted with Alberto Rossi? Bellini let out a short laugh, though there was no warmth in it. Acquainted? He was my enemy. The man stole my wine supplier, undercut my prices, and lured away my best chef 10 years ago. He ruined my chance to open a second restaurant in Mayfair. Do I grieve his passing? No. Do I kill him? Equally. No. Hastings bristled. That's a rather cold way to speak of a man scarcely dead. Bellini spread his hands.
I am honest. Alberto Rossi was admired by London, yes, but in our trade, admiration is not friendship. Still, murder, that is beneath me. Poirot leaned forward, his voice velvet soft. And yet, you dined at Trattoria Rossi last night, did you not? For the first time Bellini faltered. His eyes flickered, his fingers tapping against his ring. I stopped by, yes. A brief visit. I had business in the neighborhood, and I wished to taste if his wine had improved. But I left before the storm grew bad. Curious, Poirot said. The storm was already heavy by 9. Yet your coat was untouched by rain when you entered this cafe just now. Did you not say you left before the storm? Bellini's jaw tightened. I carried an umbrella. Do you doubt me because I keep myself dry? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Perhaps. Or perhaps I doubt because the witnesses saw you after 10, still
borrowed, always promising repayment. But he was slippery, charming. I tolerated it because I thought one day I would claim the restaurant itself when his debts consumed him. Hastings frowned. And with him dead, you cannot collect. Bellini spread his hands helplessly. Exactly so. Dead men pay no debts. I have lost, monsieur, not gained. Whoever killed Rossi did me no favor. Poirot tapped his chin. Unless you believed, perhaps, that with his death, the restaurant would fall to one less skilled, less clever, easier to conquer. Bellini leaned forward, his voice sharp. You underestimate Maria Rossi. That woman is as ambitious as any man. Do not think she will yield Trattoria Rossi to me. No, she will fight, tooth and nail. Poirot filed the remark away silently. Poirot, ever the dramatist himself, shifted the conversation suddenly. Tell me, Signor Bellini, do you smoke? Bellini blinked. Of course. Why? Poirot lit a match and held it up. Your case was found by the body, yet the cigarette inside bore lipstick on its tip. Feminine lipstick. Yours, perhaps? Bellini slammed a hand on the table, startling Hastings. Never. I do not consort with such tricks. If lipstick is there, it belongs to your singer, Clara White. Everyone knows she entertained Rossi in secret. Perhaps she entertained him to death. Poirot blew out the match, his mustache twitching. Touché. But beware, Signor Bellini. In your eagerness to cast suspicion, you reveal more than you intend. When Bellini had gone, striding away with his pride intact but his composure cracked, Hastings turned to Poirot. Well, I must say, old chap, I don't like him one bit. Arrogant, slippery, temperamental. If anyone had a motive, it's Bellini. Poirot smiled faintly, his eyes distant. Perhaps, but motive alone, it is like a candle without flame. One must have means and opportunity also. And our Signor Bellini, he is too obvious. The murderer here, Hastings, plays a subtler game. He glanced across the street at the shuttered windows of Trattoria Rossi. The theater continues, mon ami. The stage is crowded with actors.
Chapter 5. The Singer's Secret. The following evening found Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings seated in the dimly lit back room of the Blue Parrot Club, a haunt frequented by jazz musicians, poets, and those who preferred life after dusk. Cigarette smoke curled in lazy spirals above their heads, mingling with the scent of gin and the faint trace of cheap perfume. On stage, Clara White sang a smoky ballad that silenced the clinking of glasses. She was not conventionally beautiful, but her presence commanded the room, her voice a velvet caress, her eyes holding secrets like locked drawers. The audience seemed bewitched, but Poirot remained untouched, his gaze clinical, his mind already piecing together Clara's connection to the late Alberto Rossi. When her song ended, Clara slipped behind the curtain, her figure vanishing into the shadows. Poirot tapped the table once with his fingertip. Now, Hastings, we enter.
The dressing room was a cramped chamber of mirrors, surrounded by light bulbs, some flickering weakly. Feathers, silk gowns, and powder compacts lay strewn across the vanity. Clara, in a silk robe, stood before the mirror, wiping rouge from her lips when Poirot and Hastings entered. She did not startle. Instead, she studied them through the reflection. "I suppose this isn't a social call. You're here about Rossi." Poirot inclined his head. "Mademoiselle, you are most perceptive. The late Signor Rossi and you, how shall we say, shared an understanding, no?" Clara laughed bitterly, the sound edged with steel. "Understanding? That's one way of putting it. He promised me songs, patronage, a stage beyond this smoke-filled hole. In return, I gave him company. But men like Rossi, they're generous with promises, stingy with truth." Hastings frowned. "You cared for him, then?" Her eyes flashed. "Care? Perhaps once. But lately he had grown distant, distracted. He spent more time whispering with his accountant, with Maria, with Bellini even, than he did with me. He said I had become an indulgence." Poirot stepped closer. "I followed him downstairs. He said he needed to fetch a bottle for a guest. I waited at the top of the stairs, smoking to calm my nerves. When I realized he would not return to me, I left. Perhaps the cigarette fell from my fingers, but I swear on my voice, I did not harm him." Poirot regarded her closely. He moved to the vanity, scanning the litter of items. There, half buried beneath powder puffs, lay a folded slip of paper. Poirot lifted it delicately with a handkerchief. "Is this yours, mademoiselle?" Clara's face drained of color. "Where did you—" "Give it to me." She lunged forward, but Poirot stepped back smoothly. He unfolded the note and read aloud. "If you do not cancel the debt, you will lose more than money. Midnight. The Cellar." Hastings gave a low whistle. "Good heavens! Looks like blackmail." Clara's shoulders slumped. "It isn't mine. I never wrote that. Someone planted it here to trap me." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Perhaps, but it confirms that Rossi had enemies who knew of his debts, and that midnight in the cellar was the appointed stage for confrontation." At last Clara rose, fire returning to her eyes. "Listen to me, Monsieur Poirot. I loved him once, yes. But lately I hated him as much as I adored him. That doesn't make me a murderer. The truth is, he confided something to me. The night before he died, he whispered that he feared a reckoning. That Bellini, Maria, even his accountant, all circled him like vultures. He said he had kept one secret ledger, a book that could destroy reputations. He promised me, if things went wrong, that I would know where to find it." Poirot leaned in, his voice a thread. "And do you know, mademoiselle?" Clara hesitated. "Not yet, but I think Maria does. She knows everything. She always did." Poirot bowed slightly. "Merci, mademoiselle. You have told me much, and perhaps more than you realize." Outside, the rain had begun again, tapping against the cobbles. Hastings shoved his hands into his "Do so." The night swallowed them as they walked, the rhythm of their steps echoing against the wet stones. Somewhere in the city, the truth waited, bound in ledgers, hidden in debts, and guarded by lies. Chapter 6. The Accountant's Ledger. The fog of London thickened that evening, blurring gas lamps into pale halos and swallowing sound into damp silence. Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings walked briskly down a narrow lane in Bloomsbury, their destination a nondescript office above a tobacconist's shop. It was here that Carlo Bianchi, Alberto Rossi's longtime accountant, conducted his affairs. Hastings tugged his scarf tighter. "I say, Poirot, you think Bianchi's got something to hide? He struck me as one of those dull chaps who lives for his numbers." Poirot's mustache twitched in amusement. "Mon ami, never underestimate the quiet man with the ledger. He may appear dull, but within his columns of numbers lie passions more fiery than the stage of the opera. Money, Hastings, it is the root of many crimes, mais oui? And our Signor Bianchi? He was keeper of Rossi's secrets." They ascended a steep staircase, each step creaking in protest, until they arrived at a door marked simply, C. Bianchi, Accountant. Poirot knocked thrice. The office was austere, lined with shelves of ledger books bound in brown leather. The air carried a faint mustiness of ink and dust. Behind a polished oak desk sat Carlo Bianchi, a thin man in his 40s with hollow cheeks, pince-nez glasses, and fingers stained with ink. He rose politely. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, Inspector Graves telephoned to say you might visit. Please sit. Though I confess I am grieved. Poor Alberto. He was not only my client, but my friend." Poirot seated himself delicately, scanning the room. "Friendship is admirable, Signor Bianchi. Yet friendship does not always protect from suspicion. Tell me, you managed Signor Rossi's accounts for how many years?" 17, Bianchi replied without hesitation. "Since he first opened Trattoria Rossi. I kept every book, every receipt, every
Rose, inspecting the desk with delicate fingertips. "Private indeed, but perhaps also dangerous. Because in Rossi's office we discovered a page, scorched by fire, bearing his signature and a phrase, Vendetta non dimentica. You know it?" Bianchi's hand trembled slightly as he adjusted his pince-nez. I may have written it. Rossi dictated it in despair. He was afraid. He asked me to draft notes, warnings, promises of repayment. He said if I burned them, perhaps his fear would burn also. But the fire did not erase everything, it seems. Poirot tapped the drawer lightly. "Then perhaps inside lies the true account, the secret ledger Clara White spoke of." Bianchi flinched at the name. "Clara! She meddles too much. She knows nothing of numbers, only of drama." "Nevertheless," Poirot said smoothly, "she knew Rossi feared a reckoning, and she believed you might know where his secret book was hidden." With a sigh of resignation, Bianchi unlocked the drawer. From within, he withdrew a slim black ledger bound with ribbon. He laid it upon the desk as though it were a holy relic. "This is what you seek. Rossi called it his Libro di Verità, Book of Truth. He recorded debts here, not only his own, but those others owed him, favors, bribes, illicit payments, names that could ruin men if made public." Poirot opened the ledger, turning pages with reverent care. His eyes flickered with interest. "Ah, but this is no ordinary account book. Here we have the payments from Bellini, the advances to Clara White, the purchases of rare wine on credit. And here," he stopped, tapping a name with his fingertip. Hastings leaned closer. "Good Lord! That's Maria Rossi, his own wife." "Oui," Poirot said gravely. "She owed him, it seems, for jewelry purchased in her name. But why record his wife as debtor? Unless he sought leverage, or mistrust grew between them." Bianchi interjected quickly. "Alberto kept accounts on everyone, even family. Bellini, Clara, Maria, all entangled. But who tore the final page from this book? See, The ribbon is frayed, the paper uneven. A page was removed, and that page may contain the name of the killer. Bianchi wrung his hands. I swear I did not remove it. I guard these books as my life, but last week, yes, someone broke into my office. The lock was forced. I thought nothing taken, but perhaps... Poirot leaned close, his eyes sharp. And you did not report this? I feared disgrace. An accountant whose office is burgled. Clients lose faith, so I said nothing. Perhaps that was my error. Poirot closed the ledger, tucking it under his arm. No, monsieur, the error was Rossi's. To keep such a book is to paint a target upon one's back. But now the target has shifted. Whoever removed that page will stop at nothing to ensure its silence. Outside, the fog pressed close, muffling the rumble of carriages. Hastings walked at Poirot's side, his brow furrowed. So, what do you make of it, Poirot? Bellini with his debts, Clara with her scorn, Maria with her secrets. Every one of them has a reason. Poirot nodded slowly. Yes, Hastings. But reason alone does not kill. Opportunity, cunning, and courage, they matter more. And above all, the murderer is an artist. He stages a cellar, a ransacked office, a cigarette butt, a missing knife. He arranges his play so that we applaud the wrong scene. But we, mon ami, must not be fooled. He paused beneath a flickering lamp, his face solemn. We seek the missing page. Until it is found, the picture remains incomplete. But I promise you this, the murderer, he is closer than we think. He walks the same fog, breathes the same air, and soon he will reveal himself. The fog swallowed their figures as they disappeared into the night. The ledger clasped tightly in Poirot's hands, both shield and snare. Chapter 7. Maria's Masquerade. The Rossi townhouse in Soho presented a picture of wealth, she said coolly. You come late. But then you are always late, aren't you, Monsieur Poirot? Late to save my husband. Late to leave me in peace. Poirot bowed slightly. Madame, forgive us. Yet peace will not come until truth is known. Maria led them into a parlor glowing with lamplight, perfumed by lilacs. Yet the air felt tight, rehearsed, as though every cushion and porcelain figurine had been arranged for show. She seated herself by the fire, motioning for them to take the sofa. You may ask your questions, she said, but I will answer only what suits me. Poirot's mustache bristled. Madame, you are gracious. Then let us begin simply. Your husband, he kept a ledger, no? With names, debts, secrets. Her hand stilled upon the pearl necklace. He kept many books. He was a man of business. Oui, Poirot replied softly. But one book in particular, a libro di verità. Did you know of it? Maria's lips curved faintly. If such a thing existed, why would he show it to me? Husbands do not bear their sins to wives. Hastings interjected. But your name was in it, madame. We saw it ourselves. For the first time, a crack in her mask appeared. Her eyes narrowed. He would do that, even to me. Yes, I owed him. Jewelry, gowns, a life of appearances. He tallied it all, as though marriage were an account to be settled. That was Alberto. He never gave a gift without binding it in numbers. Poirot leaned forward. And when a man binds his wife with numbers, madame, does she not wish to cut the cord? Maria's laugh rang sharp. Cut it? Yes, often I wish to. Do you know what it is to be paraded like a trophy? To smile at creditors, at rivals. While he gambled away respect, he bought me pearls when I asked for security. He promised me a future and left me chained to his debts.
So yes, I despised him. But murder? No. That is vulgar, Monsieur Poirot. I may hate, but I do not stain my hands. Poirot considered her gravely. And yet, the night of his death, you were absent from this house.
Believe another guilty. Clara White, perhaps. She was always circling him, a vulture dressed in sequins. Hastings muttered, "That's not very charitable." Maria snapped, "Charity is for the church, Captain Hastings. Clara coveted what was mine. She deserved the noose long before Alberto's death." Poirot interjected gently, "And yet, madame, hatred alone does not make a murderess. But your masquerade, your lie of Chelsea, this speaks loudly. Lies are the garments of guilt." Maria whirled on him, eyes blazing. "Do not toy with me, Monsieur Poirot. You think you see everything, but you are blind. Alberto had enemies far greater than me. Bellini would see him ruined. His own accountant kept records sharp enough to cut throats. Why should I kill, when others stood ready to do it for me?" At that moment, the maid entered with a tray of tea, her hands shaking as she set it down. A delicate porcelain cup slipped, shattering upon the rug. Maria hissed with fury, "Stupid girl! Leave us!" The maid fled, leaving the fragments. Poirot's eyes lingered on the shards. He bent, retrieving a small scrap caught between them. It was paper, torn and smeared with ink. He held it up to the lamplight. "Ah, a fragment of a page, and from a ledger, no less. The missing page, perhaps." Maria's composure fractured. "That? No, it is nothing. Alberto left papers everywhere." Poirot inspected it closely. Though smudged, one line was legible. Pagamento mezzanotte, cantina. Payment, midnight, cellar. Hastings whispered, "Good Lord, Poirot, it's the appointment. The very moment he died." Poirot tucked the fragment into his case. "Merci, merci, madame. You have been most helpful." At the door, Maria's voice rang after them. "If you condemn me, Poirot, you will regret it. I am no weak widow. I will fight." Poirot paused, looking back. "Madame, I do not condemn. I only observe. And what I observe is that the masquerade continues." They walked on through the fog, their figures vanishing into the mist, as though themselves actors upon a dim and shifting stage. The Rival's Gambit. The following morning dawned pale and gray, the city wrapped in mist as though London itself wished to hide its face. Poirot and Hastings traveled eastward by cab, the wheels hissing on damp cobblestones. Their destination was the heart of Little Italy, where Antonio Bellini ruled his empire of wine and pasta from a restaurant as grand as Rossi's was modest. Bellini's trattoria sat like a fortress at the corner of the square, its facade gleaming with polished stone, windows glowing golden even in the morning fog. Men stood about the entrance, thick-necked fellows whose hands lingered near their coats in ways that suggested more than napkins lay concealed within. Hastings shifted uneasily. "Dash it all, Poirot, this looks more like a gangster's hideout than a restaurant." Poirot smoothed his mustache. "Appearances, mon ami, always appearances. Bellini plays the part of the respectable restaurateur, but beneath the sauce and the Chianti flows a darker vintage. Let us see if we may taste it." Inside, the restaurant gleamed with chandeliers, gilded mirrors, and crimson drapery. The scent of garlic and wine lingered, though the dining room was empty at this hour.
At the far end, Antonio Bellini rose from a leather chair like a king from his throne. He was a man of 50, broad-shouldered, his black hair streaked with silver, his eyes dark and unblinking. A heavy gold ring flashed on his hand as he extended it.
Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, I have heard of your arrival in my quarter, and I suppose you come to question me about poor Signor Rossi.
Poirot bowed. Your supposition is correct, monsieur. You and Rossi, you were rivals, no? Bellini's smile was sharp.
Rivals, yes. Enemies, perhaps. But enemies who share a table. We competed, we bargained, we fought. Yet I did not kill him, if that is what you imply.
Unsavory reputation in Whitechapel. What business had you there? Bellini's smile faded. You pry too much, Poirot. Those men are suppliers, nothing more. A businessman must deal with many sorts. Suppliers of wine or of silence? Poirot asked softly. For a moment, tension crackled like static. Then Bellini laughed, loud and theatrical. You have spirit, Monsieur Poirot, but you chase shadows. Rossi's death was convenient, yes, but convenience is not guilt. He poured Chianti into crystal glasses, sliding one toward Poirot. Drink, and leave the dead to their graves. Poirot touched the glass but did not sip. Merci, but I drink only truth. And truth tells me you played a gambit, Signor Bellini. You profited by Rossi's death, yet kept your hands clean. The question is, did you also move the pawn who struck? As they rose to leave, Poirot's sharp eyes caught a folded note tucked beneath a silver platter. With permission unasked, he lifted it. Scrawled in rough Italian were the words, Il libro deve sparire. The book must disappear. Hastings stiffened. Good Lord, the ledger! Bellini snatched the note from Poirot's hand, his face darkening. That is none of your concern. A prank, nothing more. Poirot's voice was velvet, but his gaze was iron. Non, monsieur, not a prank, a command. Someone in your circle fears the ledger, just as Rossi did. Perhaps you, perhaps another. But fear, it leaves a long shadow. Outside, Hastings exhaled deeply. Well, Poirot, I'm dashed if I know what to make of him. He's as slippery as an eel, yet he doesn't strike me as a killer. Too visible. Poirot smiled faintly. Ah, Hastings, you sense it too. Bellini plays the game of power. He moves pieces, but does not sully his hands. His alibi may be true, yet still he profits from Rossi's fall. It is the gambit of the rival. Sacrifice the pawn, gain the board. But tell me, who was his pawn? Hastings scratched his head. Could be Clara, could be Maria, even Bianchi, if Bellini leaned on him hard enough. Just so.
Carpet. Hastings sat nearby, drumming impatient fingers upon the arm of a chair. Poirot, we've been staring at that wretched book for hours. What do we truly know? One missing page, and suddenly you behave as if the whole mystery hinges on it. Poirot stopped abruptly, raising a finger. Ah, Hastings, but it does. Regarde, mon ami. This book is a stage, yes? The names, the numbers, they are characters. Debtors and creditors, all bound by Rossi's pen. But what is a play without its final act? The missing page, it is the climax. Without it, the drama is incomplete. Poirot turned the ledger again and again, as if by sheer force of will he could conjure the absent leaf. Then he bent close, peering through his little magnifying glass. Observe, he said softly. The tear is uneven. Not made in haste, no. It was removed with care. And here, ink smudge on the margin of the penultimate page. A hand lingered, pressing too hard, perhaps in agitation. Hastings leaned forward,
So someone stole it deliberately. But who? Poirot's eyes gleamed. The one who had most to fear from its words. Bellini, perhaps. Or Maria. Or Clara. Or even our Signor Bianchi, the accountant. The truth, Hastings, is that Rossi's book was a weapon. And whoever tore that page has disarmed, or sought to. Before Hastings could reply, a sharp knock rattled the door. Poirot tilted his head. At this hour, curious. He opened it to find the maid from the Rossi household, her face pale as parchment, her breath pluming in the chill. She clutched a small parcel, wrapped in brown paper and string. For you, monsieur, she whispered. Madame said nothing. This was slipped beneath the door this afternoon. I dared not open it. I think it is dangerous. Poirot accepted the parcel with a grave nod. Merci, mademoiselle. You are wise. He closed the door and set the package upon the table. Hastings swallowed. Dash it, Poirot! It could be anything. A bomb, even. Poirot smiled faintly. Ah, Hastings, you have read too many penny thrillers.
Theater. Someone wants us to see this, to believe Clara guilty. Hastings frowned. But why frame her now? She's already under suspicion. Poirot tapped his temple. Just so. Which makes it too convenient. When the truth is too neat, it is not the truth. Poirot had little time to ponder further, for another knock, this one urgent, frantic, shook the door. Inspector Graves barged in, rain dripping from his hat. Poirot! Hastings! Trouble! Clara White has been found. She was hiding at a boarding house in Camden. Claims she's in danger. Keeps muttering about Rossi's book. Poirot's eyes sparkled. Parfait! The drama approaches its denouement. We must see her at once. At the boarding house, Clara sat in a dim room, wrapped in a shawl, her eyes red from tears. She started when Poirot entered, then sagged with relief. Thank God you've come. They'll kill me, Poirot. I know too much. Poirot seated himself calmly. Who will kill you, mademoiselle? Them. Bellini, Maria, all of them. Rossi told me. He said the ledger would ruin them all. He gave me money, £500, to disappear. He begged me to leave London, but I stayed. Fool that I am. And now he's dead. Hastings stared. So it's true, you were paid that very night? Clara nodded miserably. Yes, but I never killed him. I swear it. When I left, he was alive. I went out the back into the storm. Someone else must have come after. Poirot leaned forward. And the page from the ledger. Did you send it? Clara blinked. No, I never saw the ledger. But someone wants me to hang for this. Please, Poirot, you must believe me. On the cab ride back, Hastings was restless. It doesn't add up, Poirot. She admits she took the money, was there at the hour, yet insists she's innocent. Are you convinced? Poirot closed his eyes briefly, as though savoring the pieces of a puzzle at last forming their picture. Hastings, listen carefully. Rossi planned to pay Clara, yes, but the page, someone tore it out to frame her. Rossi feared a reckoning. He summoned Marie to unmask the murderer. He folded his hands, eyes glinting like steel. It is time, Hastings, for the curtain to rise. Chapter 10. The Final Revelation. The Rossi cellar had never seemed so alive with shadows. Gas lamps sputtered against damp stone, their light dancing upon casks and cobwebs alike. The air was heavy with the scent of old wine and mildew, as though the building itself remembered every whispered bargain and every sin sealed in its depths. Tonight, however, it would not be Rossi's secrets the cellar kept, but Poirot's truth. One by one the suspects arrived. Maria Rossi, her mourning veil drawn low, though her eyes glittered with defiance.
Clara white, pale and trembling, her hands twisting a handkerchief to rags. Antonio Bellini, resplendent in a dark coat, moving with the confidence of a man certain of his importance. And finally, Carlo Bianchi, the accountant, modest and hunched, his spectacles glinting as though reflecting all he had ever tallied in ink. Poirot stood at the center, his mustache immaculate, his eyes twin stars of command. Hastings lingered at his side, heart pounding. Inspector Graves leaned against a barrel, his watchful gaze promising arrest at the merest word. "My friends," Poirot began, his voice smooth, resonant, echoing softly in the chamber. "We gather here to close a circle. A man is dead, Signor Luigi Rossi. Around his death swirl many suspicions, many lies. Yet only one truth. Tonight, that truth steps into the light." Poirot turned first to Maria. "The widow. You had reason enough, madame. A husband unfaithful, a life embittered, and in the ledger, debts recorded under your name. You might have sought freedom with his death." Maria's voice was sharp. "I despised him, yes. But murder? No. My shame was enough." Poirot inclined his head. "Just so. Your motive strong, yet the evidence weak." He faced Clara, the mistress, paid handsomely to disappear, yet found lurking in Camden, clutching your fear.
There is more. Observe, the page returned to me, posted not by Rossi, not by Clara, not by Bellini. Who, then, held the power of the ledger? Who lived among its numbers as a spider lives among its web? His eyes blazed as they fell upon Bianchi. The accountant stiffened, his lips parting. "Monsieur, I only kept records. I was Rossi's servant." "Non, monsieur," Poirot thundered. "You were his master, for who knows more than the servant who counts the coin? You saw every secret, every debt, every betrayal. You knew Rossi paid Clara to vanish. You knew Maria's shame. You knew Bellini's dealings. And you knew that with Rossi dead, the balance sheet could be rewritten, debts erased, fortunes shifted. By your pen, the world remade." Poirot stepped closer, voice dropping to a whisper that carried through the stillness. "On that night, Rossi summoned Clara to the cellar. He pressed money into her hand. She fled. Then came you, Signor Bianchi. Rossi confronted you, for he had discovered you were bleeding him, falsifying entries, siphoning funds. He threatened to expose you, and you, fearing ruin, struck, a blow, quick and final. Then you tore out the page that proved his last act of mercy, and you crafted a trap to condemn Clara. But," Poirot raised a finger, "you made one mistake." Bianchi's face drained of color. "What mistake?" Poirot held up the page. "You sent this to me, not to destroy Clara, but to test me, to see if Hercule Poirot could be deceived. Ah, mon ami, vanity. It is always the downfall. You wished to play the grand game, but Poirot, he does not lose." Bianchi staggered back, his spectacles slipping. "No, you cannot prove." Inspector Graves stepped forward. "We've got enough. The handwriting matches, the ink stains, the accounts you alone balanced. It's over." Bianchi's voice broke. "Do you know what it is, to be nothing? To keep the books, to watch them feast, to watch them drink, while you drown in their lies? Rossi mocked me, called me a clerk, a mouse. I showed him the mouse has teeth." His hands shook as he slumped against a barrel. "It was never meant cuffs. It is not magic, Hastings. It is only order, method, and the little gray cells. Always they march." As the cellar emptied, Poirot lingered a moment, gazing at the stains upon the stone where Rossi had fallen. His voice, low and solemn, drifted through the silence. "The world believes men fall to bullets, to blades, to poison. But often, Hastings, they fall to pride. Rossi's pride in secrecy, the Yankee's pride in cleverness. Pride is the sharpest knife of all. Poirot turned, the lamps casting long shadows behind him. Come, Hastings. The case is closed. Rossi sleeps. And London, she breathes again.